Hey guys, so today I'm going to be talking about taking rose cuttings, and this rose bush has been in my yard and it's my wife's favorite rose bush. I believe she picked it out almost 10 years ago, but unfortunately it's struggling in this location. It's not under irrigation and it gets quite a bit of sunlight. I think it gets 6, 8 hours a day of intense afternoon sun. And so I think that's why it struggles. It comes back every year and we treat it for disease, we fertilize it, but it just always seems to struggle. And I think the biggest reason is heat and the lack of irrigation. And sometimes you just forget about things when you're got so many other things to do in life. So this rose bush, I'm going to take cuttings from it, propagate it, and along with two other rose bushes, an old-fashioned climbing rose bush that's been in my yard probably for longer than I've lived here, which is 25 years. So I'm guessing it's 30, 35 years old, maybe older. But that rose bush also I want to take some cuttings because it's actually on the other side of my fence. It's on my property line, but I don't have access to the base of it. So I want to start that one in some new locations. The third type of rose bush, I had 4 of them in a location, and again, I think it was too hot and too dry. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take cuttings from all 3, propagate them, and before we do, I wanted to show you a few tips of things that I've just thought of here recently in the last year or two that really makes things speed up and keeps things more neatly organized in my shop next to the greenhouse. So we'll go in there first before we start taking rose cuttings, and then we'll get back on the topic of today. So what I was referring to about storing things and making things more neat and organized was an idea I came across, and I'm sure other people have thought about the same thing. But this is aquarium gravel, perlite, vermiculite, and it just makes it a lot easier to have it stored like this where it's perfectly dry. The bag, when you're pouring directly out of a vermiculite bag, dust goes everywhere. So this cuts down on the dust just a little bit. Aquarium gravel, I often use that in propagation, so this is a great way to store it. It comes in a 25-pound bag from Walmart, and usually I just keep it year round because I'm always using it on bonsai and propagation methods. So the vermiculite is, I'll demonstrate how this works. There's 2 of these bottles. The top bottle is cut into a funnel, and it's just really easy. So it's really easy to fill, and it stores and it's perfectly protected and dry. You remove this is just painter's tape holding the funnel portion on, and then I can seal it back up, and whenever I need it, I can just have it sitting on a shelf perfectly dry. This works with these 3 great because they're already dry in their original containers. If you have some dry sand that doesn't have any moisture in it, it's completely dry, you can do the same thing with sand. Potting soil, of course, this wouldn't work because you have so much moisture and it's going to clump. So the only other thing I can think of is possibly sand, and I always try to remember to label everything so I can just grab it and go. But anyways, that's the 2-part container, and these containers are actually from the grocery store. My wife drinks this type of water. I think it's alkaline water, alkaline 88, I believe is what it's called. So these are great. They have a nice handle on them, and they're very sturdy. They can hold a good bit of weight. Like this aquarium gravel is quite heavy. So anyways, it's just a thought. But let's get back to today's subject of propagating roses. Let's move forward from there. Okay, guys, so the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to treat my cutters with some antibacterial. It's basically just antiseptic mouthwash, and I'm just going to spray it directly on the cutters and just disinfect them. I'm going to do the same thing with a razor blade I'll be using later. Wipe them down, and these look relatively new, but they have been used a few times, so I'm afraid I might cross-contaminate or could do something to damage through a biological agent, so I don't want to do that by accident. So I'm just going to wipe that down to make sure we don't cross-contaminate. And so the next thing, we need to put the cuttings in water. We'll do that as well. And we're ready to go and take our cuttings and move on to the next step. Okay guys, this is my wife's favorite rose bush, and what I want to do is take some cuttings. They're not hardwood, this darkened off grayish. We don't want that. That's going to be a little bit harder to root. And I don't want anything that's just completely new growth either, that's too soft. I want to take kind of a semi-hardwood cutting. So I'm going to take 3 cuttings from this. I don't want to take too much. It's struggling anyway, so I don't want to put it in under any more pressure, but I'm just going to take a cutting from the side right below the leaf nodes. One there, one there, and a third cutting I'm going to take on this side. And it's semi-hardwood cuttings, which is going to be easier than taking cuttings from the hardwood or something that's just newly sprouted, which both can be done, but you can have a lot fewer success, a lot less propagation success with that. So I've just taken it semi-hardwood cuttings, and so like this is completely dead. I believe that's not even hardwood, that's just a dead branch. But that's what you look for, is something that's semi-hardwood, and we'll move on from there to the next rose bush. All right, on this rose bush, I'm just looking for some junctions, kind of a Y. And again, I don't want to take the hardwood. I want to take semi-hardwood. So I'm going to look around until I find one that I like. And this one looks like it's semi-hardwood. So that's one. This is a good junction right here. Two. Those right there. We'll get them in the water very quickly. And let's see, a third cutting. I think this will work. Right below the leaf nodes. So we want a lot of leaf nodes, and we're going to remove most of these leaves, and we're going to actually do some scar tissue right at the base where we put our rooting hormone. So this is the climbing rose, and it's climbed directly over this fence for many years. And I want to take some semi-hardwood cuttings. I'm going to pull it down there. Hopefully I can get a few good cuttings from it. Right there at the juncture, the Y. You see I cut it right there at a juncture. I'm only going to take three. A little bit harder to reach it. I'm going to cut the third one there. We'll take these back to the shop and clean them up there. So I know we'll run out of daylight before I have a chance to film the moment of Zen, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. But this I purchased many years ago, well over a decade. But the age of it is probably thousands of years, and it is a tree. And you say, how can it be a tree? Well, it's actually a petrified tree. You can see up here on the top, you can see the inner part of the tree where it was compressed under massive amounts of pressure and mud and water. And so that is a tree that I've had, the oldest tree in the yard, I would bet. I purchased it many years ago from an auction site, and it's kind of hard to find petrified wood unless you know somebody that deals in it, but it's one of my favorite pieces of, I suppose you could say, Zen things in the yard that I really enjoy. But I put it in this little Japanese humidity tray and put one of the little mud accessories to make it look like it's coming out of a massive cliff. And so I just put it right here, and I do enjoy little things like that. I don't know, I've always liked miniatures, so I thought I'd do the moment of Zen right in the middle of the instruction. I hope that's okay. Okay guys, I'm working in the shop today because it is brutally hot in the greenhouse. So what I'm doing is I'm going to take on the first 6 cuttings of my wife's rose bush that she wants me to try to propagate. We're going to do about 80% vermiculite. If you hold that a little bit further away, we're going to have a dust storm here. 80% vermiculite and about 20% black cow. So that's 80% vermiculite to 20% black cow. So we have some of our black cow composted manure. I'm just going to put a few handfuls of that in there. I have a rough estimation there. Just mix that up. And I don't know if you can see it, but I'm creating a vermiculite storm here. Okay, now let me see if you can see that. It's kind of hard to see outside the light, but it's just a mixture. You can see that. Like I said, 80% vermiculite. We're using really small containers for the first 6 cuttings. So I'm going to set this aside there. Hopefully, no, I guess we have to move this here so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, I'm using this humidity tray specifically for cuttings and seeds. The actual pot size is very small. It has holes in the bottom, but this will hold water up to this point right here where it will leak out. So you can see it. The water will come up to about 1 inch, and then it'll drain out of the drain holes, maybe a little bit of 1.5 inches there. So I'm going to go ahead and fill 6 of these with our potting mixture. Try to get that right. 6 of those. And the reason I like vermiculite, it allows for so much airflow. Okay, if you can see that. And it allows a lot of oxygen in the root system, so it allows the roots to really, and it's very extremely light, so it allows the roots to do their thing. I'm running low there, but I think I got enough. Okay, so there's our 6 pots that we're going to have in our humidity tray. And we'll start now by getting the cuttings and cut them, and I'll show you exactly what to do on the cuttings. Okay, so you can see I cut it originally right below this leaf node. So I'm going to remove the second branch, the first branch here, and just break off some of the thorns that can also generate roots, but we're going to focus the rooting area right here at the base. That's what we want to root. And we don't have a lot of room to deal with because these domes are kind of short. So I'm going to cut the second off. And you don't necessarily have to have leaves. You can do this just with a stem, which the cutting can put more energy into root production rather than keeping the leaves in great shape. So I'm taking my razor blade that I've sterilized, and I'm just going to wound the plant. I'm hoping you can see this. Let's see if I can come around this side. So we're going to try to wound the plant up about 1 inch from the base. Okay, and you can see we've wounded right there, right here at the base. We've created about a 1 inch wound. We're going to take our rooting, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. All right, we're going to take our rooting hormone, and we want to dip it into the spoon and not directly into the container because I don't want to contaminate it for a future project, and I'll be confused as to why that didn't work. So we're going to take this, dip it into the rooting hormone, and get it into the vermiculite all the way to the bottom. We need to test it and make sure that we're not too tall here. It's really close, so I'm going to have to cut a little bit more off. Okay, I'm just going to cut just a little bit more at the top. Let's see if that will work. Perfect. Still touching, but we're okay. And also the great thing, before I forget about it, these humidity trays, planting trays, whatever you want to call them, they come with this thing right here that you put directly on the top, and you can twist it and you can open it and have more or less air. Let's see if I can do this properly. It's not wanting to go in there. Let's see. Oh, there we go. It snapped into place. So you can twist that. They're very inexpensive on Amazon. And you can twist. I like to do about a 50% or less just to allow a little bit of heat to escape during the day, not open it all the way. So that's our first cutting. And let's take the second one. Now this one's a little bit bigger. And we'll probably have some left over that I'll put into cups and just put in open cups and not have a humidity. Well, they'll have a humidity top, but not inside the humidity dome. We've taken that right there. We're going to cut it pretty short. I'm going to wound the bottom of it. Now I probably went over 1 inch there, but I think you can see that I've wounded this. That's where our roots are going to form right there. I'm going to carefully, I don't think I'm getting enough on there, so I'm going to use a very small paintbrush to make sure that it's covered all over the wound. I just want to brush it up all on the wound. Okay, let's see if you can see that. So the wound is completely covered in rooting hormone. Put that into the perlite all the way to the bottom. Okay, the third cutting. Okay, let's see. I want to take this one right here at this juncture. You can see that right there at the juncture. I'm going to cut right below it. Okay, cut off the side branch and do about, I've got about 6 inches of space to work with, so I'm going to wound the base of it as I did the first two. And I know this is repetitive, but I just want to make sure that I'm making it pretty easy to understand. Okay, take your paintbrush with a rooting hormone and just paint it thoroughly onto the wounded area, all the way around in the base. Take this one and stick it in the vermiculite again. See if we can find another cutting here, because I was only planning on using those 3, but I think we've got enough for probably 6. So right there at the juncture, you can see this juncture, I'm going to cut right there. Cut the side off. Cut this second one off. We've got some extra set of nodes. Cut this side off. Take the top off. Now we're ready to wound about 1 inch with a really sharp razor blade. Is what we want, really sharp. And remember, sterilized razor blade. Okay. Take our paintbrush and put some more rooting hormone on it. Brush it all the way around at the base. Put this one in the vermiculite. That was really short. Okay, let's see. I think this one's got a good place where we can take a cutting. So I'm going to take that right below the juncture, the Y. Cut it off. Cut off. Cut it off here. Cut some of these new shoots off. Okay, cut that one off. Cut the top out. Okay, let's do a little bit of wounding here. And maybe scraping is better than cutting. I think I can remove more of the outer bark a little bit easier. You can see, I'm sorry, I know it's a little bit harder to see in the greenhouse, but when I'm filming in the greenhouse, it's a little bit darker and the sun is already set. Okay, we're just using these LED lights I need to replace with, I'm sorry, this is fluorescent. I need to replace it with a really bright LED. So that's that. I'm going to put that 5th one in there. Okay, let's see if we can find a 6th one there. Here we are again. We see the Y, this juncture right here. Cut the left side off. Cut right there. Let's take our razor blade and wound it. Lots of area for new roots to come out and form, about 1 inch. Paint our rooting hormone all the way around the base and the very tip of the bottom. And that goes there. So that is our 6 that we've done. We're going to put the top on. And these tops are not perfectly fitted, so I like to put a little bit of painter's tape around the outer edge. Let me find my painter's tape. Now I'm not going to do that now, but later I will be. I've got to water these first before I tape it up, but I'm going to tape all the way around the outside. Cut this to about 50%, where only 50% of the air can escape. It's adjustable there. These are, like I said, very cheap on Amazon. So that way you'll still have lots of humidity inside here, but then the heat can escape during the day. This will be placed in total shade. So if this were to be placed in sunlight, there would be no chance of this working, and they would just cook inside of there. So now we'll move on to the next set, and I'm going to do those a little bit differently than the first set. Okay, the next set I'm doing a little differently. I'm using I guess you could call these Starbucks cups that come with the lids, but they were actually purchased brand new off of Amazon. But the reason I like them, you hear that snap, it will not spill out unless it's hit really hard. It's got a top already open, and I can tape that 80 to 90% of it just to allow a little bit of heat to escape, but it'll retain almost all of the moisture. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of my aquarium gravel. I've already got some poured up here. So I'm going to take my aquarium gravel and put in the base. This seems to always work better because it's kind of a reservoir for water at the very bottom. And I usually do it just the bottom 2 inches of the cup. Okay, next I'm going to take our perlite, and this is going to be an all perlite cutting. Okay, I know it's creating a dust cloud there that you can probably see. Okay, so we've got the cup about half filled. Bottom is a reservoir where water can wick back up to the perlite. Now we're going to take the climbing rose. It's one of the best roses in my yard because it's came back year after year after year, and it's never died out. So I'm going to take the first cutting right below this branch, right at the leaf node, cut that off. And we're just going to have about 6 to 8 inches. We don't have a lot of room here to work with. So I'm thinking it's going to be about right there. Okay, set that aside. Now I'm going to wound the bottom just like the first two with a razor blade. Just do some scratching. Maybe that's easier than cutting. Yeah, this one wounds a lot easier. Okay, and you can see right there. Let's see if it's easy to See in the light, the cut. So now we're going to take our paintbrush, paint our base with a rooting hormone. We're going to put that in our cup, but we're not going to send it all the way to the bottom, but just to the point of where the perlite is contacting the gravel. You can feel it becomes harder to push down through that. Okay, we're going to put this on top. Just come down a little bit more. I think we're just at the top of the gravel. Now, once we water it, I'm going to take a piece of tape, electrical tape that will very sticky and it will stay on there for a long time. But I'm going to leave it slightly open to allow a little bit of heat to escape, but keep in most of the moisture. And this will be put into a 6-cup container so that will keep it from falling over and keep everything safe. So that is one of the climbing roses. And so we'll move on to the next one. Okay, and so I'm going to just do the other two off camera, but I wanted to get on to the third rose type. This is a shrub rose, and it always seems to have a lot of problems. Some years it's attacked by the Japanese beetles. Disease is not a huge problem, but insects are definitely so. And it's very easy to dry out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take right below the cutting right there. I'm just going to cut that base off, cut the side branch, cut all these leaves off going all the way up. And I just want to keep this type of rose in the yard, so I'll have a backup. I used to have probably 50 of these bushes, but over the years in the South, they just do not do well. I'm going to leave just maybe half a leaf on each one of these, a quarter of a leaf maybe. But even though they don't do well, I sure do like them when they're in full bloom in May and June, and they always look great. So we're going to scrape that off to a heavy wound, about an inch, inch and a half. You can see that. We're going to paint it with our dust here, the Hormonid 3. I don't know if I mentioned that, but that's actually the brand I like to use. I've been using it for bonsai and plants for many, many years. It's not cheap, but that container will last you a decade or more easily unless you're just doing massive amounts of planting. Okay, going to do the same thing on this type of rose. We're going to have our water reservoir there. We're going to do it strictly with perlite. And we're going to fill it up to a half a cup. Maybe a little bit more than that. Okay, level it out. And I still think we're going to be way too tall, so I'm going to cut the top out. Even though we did that, it'll be okay. I just have to make sure that we have the right height there. And even so, even after that, it's still too tall. Okay, and that is the shrub rose. I'm not going to tape this one yet because I'm going to take it outside and water it. And so I'll take you with you. I'll take you with me out there so you can see that process, and then I'll come back in and finish this up. But that's how I do rose cuttings. And you get a success rate can vary. You could have a 50% success rate, 75%. A lot of it depends on temperature, moisture, a lot of things that you can't control. So you can just do, how many of you do, just count on maybe 50% making it and 50% not producing roots. Okay, let's go outside before it's too late and we will water everything. All right, guys, so I'm finished up for the night and I've gotten 6 of the first cutting done. I went ahead and did something a little different with these. I'm going to try sand with the base of the aquarium gravel right there, so it can act as a water reservoir. And this is just pure sand with the cutting. Also, I did the same thing with perlite and the aquarium gravel. I'm going to take these out and water them. I'm going to put a small piece of electrical tape over 95%, so only a small amount of the heated air can escape from there and most of the humidity will remain inside. These are going to all go on lunchroom trays, so it can also have some humidity from below. So like I said before, these are in total shade. One last thing I will say about patented roses. I believe the patented has ran out on one of these roses. One of them is probably been, if it was ever patented, it's been out for decades, the climbing rose that is. And then my wife's rose, I'm pretty sure that's been here for over a decade and it probably was already out. But anyways, I'm not planning on selling anything. The only place you would run into a problem If you set up your own nursery and you started selling patented plants, that's where you'd run into a big problem. So anyways, these are all for personal use and will never be sold. Someone might want to take a cutting one day, but never sold. None of that going on. So it's just strictly for pleasure and hobby. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something. And if you would, please like and subscribe. I appreciate every single person. I reached a milestone today for me personally in subscribers. It's a very small number, but for me, it means a lot. So thanks a lot, and I hope you have a great day. Night has fallen, so I'm going to have to get back into the house and eat dinner. Have a great day, guys.